Hi, Assalamualaikum. How's everybody doing on the last week of Ramadan? I'm gonna wait a bit for people to come in and join us, and then we will accept Ustaz Farouq to join us. How's my volume? Is it okay? Or is it too soft? Hi. Hi, Assalamualaikum everybody. We're gonna go live soon. InsyaAllah. You guys already know Ustaz Farouq because he's the first Asatiza that helped us cover and understand the meaning of halal in our very first IG Live series. Our first IG Live episode, and today is the fourth one that we're doing in Ramadan. So after this episode, we are going to take a short break, okay, while we celebrate Hari Raya, insyaAllah. Okay, Ustaz Farouq is here, so let's go. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, please just leave in the comments and we'll go through them, okay? Assalamualaikum, Ustaz.
Waalaikumsalam. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, alhamdulillah. It looks
Okay.
like the connection is a lot better today.
I hope so. It better be. Okay, but
Okay,
my audio,
sorry? Yeah.
is my audio all okay?
Yes, it looks
Okay.
fine. Looks and sounds fine.
Okay.
Okay, Ken. So as I go, I hope everyone's doing okay. And with the 30 of you guys who are here live, I just wanna have a check-in. How many of you guys watched the show Seaspiricy on Netflix already? And currently having an existential crisis with the food that you're eating and the food choices that you're making. Let's see. So if you guys have watched, leave a comment so we know that you guys know what exactly we're talking about today. Let's see. Yeah, so the numbers are going in and out. I just want to talk about your ratings, Ustaz, from the first series or the first episode.
Yeah, the ratings.
Yes, the ratings.
Okay.
I was actually surprised because when you're the first to run this kind, so I wasn't really sure how it was gonna turn out. Alhamdulillah, after the live show, I think your one garnered about 3,000 views, and then
Okay, alhamdulillah.
followed by Ustazah Nazira punya, which was, I think right now is at 5,000 views. Yeah. Yay, there are people who watched. Okay, great. So now that you guys have watched, and let me know your feelings. So me and Ustaz, we are going to talk about the show first. I'm gonna give a quick run through of the show Seaspiracy and why I wanted to discuss this from a halal perspective. So but for you guys who have already watched, while I'm giving this intro to Seaspiracy, why don't you guys leave me comments and tell me about the questions that are in your head and what problems you're facing in your decision making with your food. Just a funny story. When I said I wanted to discuss this at this series from Netflix, right? It's not a series, it's just one show. I told the office that I was gonna do it, and my office there's like 4 or 5 people. Immediately they asked me, "Is this gonna make me not want to eat seafood? Because if it is, then I'm not gonna watch it."
Well, we have all been there.
But eventually quite a number of them watch it. Yeah, just that they do not want to feel the negative feelings. But I will assure you that by the end of this IG live, that you guys will be okay. Okay, you will be okay, and we won't ask you to go vegan. Okay, I
hope
promise.
so.
Okay, so for those of you guys who haven't watched, okay, I'm just gonna give a quick run through. For Seaspiracy is actually I would say an expose piece of a film done in the fishing industry. Okay, so they covered topics, they covered experiences of people who work in the fishing industry, and they also kind of explained what happens in the fishing industry, how much we are consuming, how much we are fishing from the sea, and what is the population of the fishes in the sea, what the populations are like right now, and the implications that it has on the basically on our population and on the on okay it covers basically our consumption habits and what is the effect on the sea population and the life in the sea. And there were some jarring things that were shared in that show, and I wanted to macam just give a perspective on this. And when I watched it, I personally was like, oh no, I have to turn vegan, and I have no way of going vegan, and that's gonna be a problem. And that's the first reaction. But the second reaction was what is the Islamic perspective on this? Because and if it is halal in the first place, because if how do I put it, consumption of fish leads to the eradication of sea life in the sea and the eradication of populations in the sea, then it can't possibly be halal, isn't it? So how can something be halal and tayyib at the same time, or good for our consumption, if there are so many devastating effects of fishing as covered in Seaspiracy? When I say devastating effects, I don't just mean like there's less fishes in the sea now compared to later, but I also am talking about the devastating effects on human population. Like for example, there is issues like slavery has been mentioned. People die in this fishing industry because of, how do I put it, because of the demands of fishing, and all of these demands of fishing, or demands of consumption of these demands of fishing and demands for fish as produced in our society is actually driven by none other than um, our own want to eat seafood. And the funny thing was that when I suggested to discuss this topic, I was actually promoting a Manhattan fish market that was selling fish, and they were selling really good fish, and they were selling really good sambal sotong and everything that came from the sea. So I was kind of conflicted. I'm like, should I like change my career and stop promoting consumption of food? So I mean, the existential crisis and that's going through my head was just quite a lot. So I thought, maybe I could ask Ustaz Farouq to be my therapist for today.
Bismillah. Let us leave, or let us realize our own ironies. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
At least we can make each other
Yes.
feel good. That's good.
Okay, so Ustaz, could you help me run through this conflict that's going on in my head? Like, because all from the sea is supposed to be halal, but how halal is it when it comes to this topic? Like when it comes to the atrocities that happen that is led by our consumption of seafood.
Yeah. So, Bismillah. Thank you again for the opportunity. I think the simple answer would be what I referred to, or I alluded to in my first session, that, although it is already mentioned that halal and haram both are clear, right? But again, I think we should have a broader understanding of these terms, and we should not see these terms as something or terms that are independent or separated from each other, or separated from the entire system itself, or the ecosystem that we are referring to. So obviously the simple answer would be, even though, right, it is halal, in the future, if our halal consumption habits might cause ecological implications, then we should reconsider what halal really means, right? So that is a simple answer. But I think I shared with you also that I watched Susan Nazira's session with you, and I really enjoyed that session because she highlighted, I think, something that is very key, which is the fitrah of men or human. We are naturally inclined to things that are beautiful. So that is why when we watch this kind of documentaries, uh, it is something that is conflicted with our fitrah. That is why we feel this, I would say, disgust, right? Because it is against our fitrah, because it's not something that is beautiful. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, He is beautiful and He loves beauty. So our fitrah is also part of fitrat Allah. So that is why we are naturally attracted, we are naturally appealed to things that are beautiful, and we are naturally disgusted by things that are disgusting. So that is a simple answer. But allow me to also share my perspective on the documentary itself. I mean, I'm sharing not just as an ustaz, right? But like many of us here, we are also consumers of the documentary. So I think I also shared with you, I had to rewatch the documentary twice to obviously do my research, right, on this session, for this session. But again, to see, to identify some of the blind spots that I've missed. But let me start with the positives first, okay? So there are basically three positives that I can draw from this documentary. First is, of course, the documentary, it highlights the harmful impact of industrial fishing on the ecosystem, and how people and communities who rely on fish and fishing as a livelihood are affected. Right? It somewhat underlined the significance of interconnectedness between humans and the natural world. Sorry. Okay, I don't have a natural stand, so that's fine. All right. Okay. So it somewhat underlined the interconnectedness between humans and the natural world that requires one to see the world as a tapestry of cause and effect. And Islam, including every religion, I believe, calls on its followers to responsibly position oneself within this dynamic tapestry to maintain the natural order that is part of Allah's cosmic plan. And our failure, or the failure to preserve this order, will result in definite chaos and strife. So that is the first point here, which is the interconnectedness and how it has basically affected those who live on fish or or sea fishing as a livelihood. So second is referring to your point that our consumption habits, how our consumption habits have contributed to this catastrophe, which was explicitly highlighted in the documentary. And unfortunately, our modern urbanized lifestyle have created this hyper-consumerist, hyper-individualistic world, right? Some are saying that we are living in a world that is radically individual, right? Unlike the world as it was previously. And third, I do think from an Islamic point of view, we need to rethink our relationship with the natural world based on ethical motivations from what I call the Tawhidic perspective, which I will elaborate further later on. So these are some of the positives that I can draw from the documentary. And going to the negatives, which is something that I had to rewatch and I had to extract after my second watch. So apart from the misinformation, so one of the misinformation that was highlighted was that by 2048 there will be no fishes, right? So some marine biologists saying that this is actually a misinformation. But I'm not going to go into the technical part. But the first, I think, can be quite controversial, which is this happened during my second watch, where it somewhat alludes to the idea of veganism, right, that intersects with a certain form of whiteness. So some say that it's white veganism, right? So I'm not, of course, referring to biological traits, but I'm referring to a particular form of mentality that perpetuates superiority and entitlement, that can be insensitive towards indigenous cultures and apathetic towards power structures that are causing these inequities in the first place. So they're not really addressing the problem, which is capitalism, for example, right? So they are blaming, for example, indigenous cultures for their consumption habits when these traditions have been there for a very long time. But why are they not blaming, for example, power structures, the overarching power structures that are causing these inequities in the first place? So, to put it simply, at the end, you can simply see that, the solution is either to go vegan, which is a particular form of lifestyle, or you go home. That's it. So that's the only solution that they offer. And secondly, I think it is also, which alludes to the first point, or it is in relation to the first point, is the unfair representation in the media. So it is not, after I highlighted that, it is not surprising then that we see an unfair representation of Asians and indigenous communities in the documentary. So when you mention slavery, right, what do you call it? It is, they really highlight the Asian community explicitly. And it somewhat perpetuates this idea that Asians are, again, vicious, uncivilized, and we need a white man or a woman to save us from ourselves. So I think it's relatable to how Muslims today are also represented in media. Either you are a terrorist, or more recently, you can say Bismillah and then drink tequila to break your fast. Then you're accepted by the mainstream community, right? This brings me to the final point. The fact that such documentaries offer virtually no alternatives in numerous communities across the world that depend on fishing for survival is problematic, in my opinion. Giving up seafood is a privilege and will not solve the issue, to be honest. Right? Giving up seafood will not solve the issue. Instead, we should channel our energy, our time, our effort in challenging policies, exploitative policies, and transforming these policies to uplift these fishing communities and also the entire ecosystem. So that is my perspective of the documentary itself. Yep.
Okay, but it still doesn't address one thing that I feel, which is powerless. Because
Sorry?
I think
I didn't catch you. Sorry?
Okay, watchers of the show, one thing that we will feel as consumers is we feel powerless, because it's something that we do not want to happen in the community. Like, okay, I'll give you an example of this. Like right now, among the youngsters, the Gen Z, right? Increasingly, they are making an active choice not to have children. Because basically they do not want to bring in their children into a world where what animals are going extinct, there's too much pollution, there's like, the world is just a terrible place, so they don't want to bring kids into this world. And to be honest, when I was deciding whether I should pursue having children with my husband also, I was like, should we really bring another life into this world? Like, do we really need to contribute to consumerism and But of course, those like guilt is laid to rest, because when it comes to whether or not we should have children, I think the guidance is and the religious aspect is far stronger. But when it comes to like this relationship between our consumer habits with how it's damaging the ecosystem in the world, right? I would say, I think we are still left with our own thoughts. So what we feel when we watch a documentary like Seaspiracy is we feel helpless and we feel guilty. These are the two things. So yes, I'm aware of the whitewashing and I'm aware of the macam intrinsic colonialism punya nuances in the video. But let's if I were to put that aside, It still doesn't change the fact that my choices lead to, like, my choices specifically me in promotion of all the seafood or food options.
Yeah.
And some of my clients are really like seafood companies. That it contributes directly towards the worsening effects of this.
Yep.
So how do I manage this guilt, like as a Muslim consumer? Yeah. Should I just say like,
So
this is beyond my power and like just leave it at that, or
no, I think we are not, or we should not feel powerless, right? We are all part of this ecosystem. So, like I mentioned, we all, each of us, each one of us, we have a responsibility to play our part. I mean, ideas that change the world, it all begins with one person, right? So we should not be afraid of, you know, changing our habits, or taking a brave decision to rethink our consumption habits. So I do not think we are at all powerless. We have the capability to make changes. It's whether we want to believe it, or we want to do it or not. But I think I would also like to address the point that you mentioned, right, about children. So I remember watching a similar documentary by the famous David Attenborough, right? I think everyone should know him. So he did mention, I think it was his, not the recent one, I think it was released last year, a similar documentary on the animal planet. So he felt there was this responsibility that he didn't address in his earlier documentaries, to remind humans of how we have basically destroyed the world because of our habits. But he also mentioned that he blamed it on overpopulation. So coming from a white guy, I think that is problematic, right? Because again, not everyone is privileged. We should be conscious of our decisions. So, for example, when we want to conceive, or when it comes to children, we should make plans, right? But we should also remind ourselves that our children or our child is more than a project, right? Our child is also a gift. Yeah. So it needs to be complemented with each other. So going back to the point earlier, right? We should not. It's good that we feel guilty, but at the same time, we should try as best as possible, make small changes to change our habit. So what I've been doing with my wife, for example, is sometimes we try our best to go Meatless Mondays, which is simply to go Indian on Monday, right? We just have simple food, and then paneer, for example, if we want something to chew on. So this kind of small efforts that starts at home, I think, can make a difference, because Allah said that He will not change the condition of the people until we ourselves change ourselves, right? So I think this changes, it starts from home. But that should also be interlinked. If, let's say, we are in a position of power, or we are in a position of privilege, to make certain choices, make certain decisions that can change the lives of people, then I think we have a greater responsibility to talk about this, to address these issues. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna give an example of an application of what you just shared to my lifestyle specifically, because as a food media, or someone who promotes food or promotes halal food, right? There have been requests for us to do mukbang videos. Do you know what mukbang videos are?
Of course.
Do you watch mukbang videos?
I try not to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for those that don't know yet, actually I was introduced to mukbang by one of our followers. Literally when they saw me eat, then they were like, why don't you just do a mukbang video? And then I saw the mukbang videos online, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. So and basically an application of what you just shared is an example of I shouldn't stop promoting food, but I should not do an example like a mukbang video where it promotes overconsumption,
Yep.
each person overeating, and basically every other thing that is that has got to do with hyper consumerism. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Yep.
everything in moderation. So it's okay that I promote Manhattan Fish Market, but it's not okay for me to promote Manhattan Fish Market eating 5 different dishes by myself and showing people that I finished it
Yeah.
entirely.
Yep, exactly. So I think that's a huge problem. This is something that I've been telling people around me, you should stop watching these kind of videos because it's really pushing you to eat more and more and more. And that is what it intends to do, right? These kind of videos. So I find discomfort in watching these videos because of that. But this is just my personal opinion on this. But yeah, so you're absolutely right.
I just want to put it out there that for whatever food review that you see me do, I actually don't finish any of the food. Okay, most of the time I end up splitting it up with the people in the office, and everyone brings it home. And then recently I've also partnered up with 3 other influencers so I can share food with them. That's how much food influences my organizational structure.
Good to know that.
Because that is actually one of the legitimate questions that people ask. Macam when I do IG live, IG Q&A, they actually
Yep,
say, do you finish all the food that you eat, or do you throw it away? Then it's such a waste
yep,
of food if you do.
yep.
Okay, so I just want to clarify again. I don't need to be vegan, right?
No. I mean, to go vegan is a choice, right? Just like how we want to have
Okay.
children, right? It is a conscious decision that we make, right? But again, we cannot go around telling everyone that you must have children, right? So likewise, of course, children is it's a tougher decision, right? When it comes to children, so we should not, equate both. But when it comes to food or when it comes to veganism, you know, I think it should not be driven by a particular lifestyle. Rather, it should be driven by faith. Because again, when it's driven by faith, then only then it will be altruistic and it will be driven by ethical principles. Um, Otherwise, it will be what I call muddled spirituality. Spirituality that is interlinked with capitalism, because you are driven by a certain lifestyle. So this is what we are alluding to white veganism. That means you are following a particular lifestyle and then you are imposing it on others, and then you are insensitive to indigenous cultures. There are a lot of communities around the world that depend on the sea for food. So if we impose that idea that we should refrain from eating on seafood, then we are insensitive towards these communities, right? So I do think that if it's a conscious choice that is driven by faith, I think it is commendable. But again, I would also recommend us to go semi-vegetarian instead of full vegetarian.
Moderation, I would say.
Moderation, yes, correct. So
Moderation.
there are types. If can, try one, maybe once a week, all right? Or maybe if it's difficult, once a month or twice a month, we can live without meat, right?
Okay.
So try. Mm.
There are a few things I want to sidetrack a little. So we're going to do some quick sidetracks because this is something I want to address because it's a question from your previous session with us, which was about the understanding of halal. So our team was doing some basically fact checks and we are producing graphics for people's references. So one of the questions that turned up was it wasn't a question, it was just how do I put it, query. So the person actually said, hey, we're going to put out a statement to say that it is okay to be vegan if it's your personal choice, right? And it's your choice, like if you're making a faith-based choice, right?
Yep.
And then she said that before the IG live, she thought that being vegan is haram. I want to understand how this understanding could come about. or misunderstanding can come about?
About going vegan is haram.
Yeah. Yes. Is it? It's not, right? I mean, I don't think it is.
Well, I've heard of people saying that because you know, they refer to the idea of udhiyah, right? During, I mean, eating meat, slaughtering, it is part of you know, the sunnah, not of just the prophet, but of man in general. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
you know, eating meat or the consumption of meat is as old as man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, I don't know. I really don't know where this idea comes from. Going vegan, maybe that person loves meat too much. But I would disagree that going vegan is haram. Again, this kind of things, our consumption habits, right? Um, Nothing is haram unless it is proven to be haram, lah. Kan?
Mm-hmm.
That is a principle that basically drives our consumption habit. But again, right? Again, when it comes to this, it has to be driven by ethical principles that is based on faith. Meaning, even if it's halal, it has to be tayyib, right? And Ustazah Nazira mentioned that tayyib is something that is not just organic, but it's something that is wholesome. So this is also some nuances of linguistic nuances that you have to be watchful. So it's not necessarily that you have to just consume organic stuff, but as long as the food is wholesome, eat in moderation. And I also mentioned in the first session this socio-economic viability, right? Meaning tayyib should be accessible to all, right? Tayyib should not just be a reality for the rich. Tayyib should be a reality for all. So when we distribute food, right? I think we should also be aware of this. You know, what we want for us, we should also give the same thing to others. And this is something that I'm finding it difficult to digest, especially when I participate in some food distribution projects. Yeah,
I see. Okay. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna run through the
sure.
questions or the things that people have written on the comments. And
Mhm.
there is this one particular comment that I want to address. Okay, and I want to explain from a industry perspective that it is not the same when it comes to eating fish, animals, or vegetables. Okay, so the comment
Mhm.
in bits here. But if we stop eating fish, everyone will then substitute it with either vegetables, chicken, or meat, then we are still depleting the world's resources. I feel like somehow it is unavoidable. Okay, so this part I want to address from an industry expert perspective. Okay, our food choices matter a lot when it
Mhm.
comes to the world's ecology, because and especially like Ustaz mentioned, moderation is important. So it's not a matter of eating like just seafood or just fish or just chicken. It's about eating
Mhm.
everything in moderation that is halal. Okay, and
Yep.
better if you can find food sources which are toyib. That means you know that they are ethical sources, and more maybe toyib will be another IG live discussion, a separate on its own. But one from let's say from a science perspective, right? Why does it matter that you eat a good amount of both and more vegetables than everything else? And this the most jarring reason is actually the rate of growth of each of these food sources. So if you
Mhm.
are talking about plants, like what is when it comes to animal, we are talking about gestational period, like how long does a chicken takes to grow, you know, before it becomes a full chicken,
Yep.
that we can eat. So baby chicks and from conception, from fertilization all the way until it becomes a big chicken and for us to eat. So what is that cycle time? And that cycle time for chicken, if I'm not wrong, it's 21 days, right?
Mhm.
So when you're talking about when you're talking about vegetables, for example, right? Why you should eat more vegetables? You can actually read up on different types of vegetables and how long it takes to grow. Some vegetables is just a matter of 6 days, and you get a full grown vegetables which is ready for consumption. You get what I mean? So
Mhm.
in general, vegetables tend to have a shorter cycle as compared to other animals. Now the thing about fishes is that you can't see Like when it comes to chicken, you can see it before you slaughter it. When it comes to kira meat or cows, right? You can see and you can decide this is a baby cow. I'm not gonna eat it. We're gonna slaughter the adult cow, and then after that you can control. Like let's say I have 50 cows. Okay, today I'm just gonna like kill 10 and sell 10, and then I'm gonna breed the rest. So there is some level of population control there, right? But when it comes to the sea, you don't have this kind of filtration process other than the size of the nets. So like so people when they basically fish, they will use the smaller the fishing nets which are finer will collect basically more species, but the fishing nets which are bigger will let all the small fishes escape and only capture the bigger fishes. So therefore bigger fishes are more often in danger because you can't catch a small fish without catching a big fish, right? And then sometimes and when you look at Seaspiracy, one of the issues that they were discussing is actually bycatch. And bycatch is very real. That means you intend to eat one tuna, but you kill another animal along the way. Now that is a problem. Okay. Same with and this problem is entirely avoidable with land animals. You get what I mean? Yeah. So so if you look at the process of how each of these animals or food sources are being raised or being produced for the world population, then you can see why it matters. So vegetables, I would say is I would say the most macam simplest and easy to grow, and they always grow in abundance. That's why agriculture they sell vegetables for cheap because I mean I'm talking about a normal one, not the like agriculture with the special seeds and all that. Those are more expensive, but the regular ones you can actually see that they sell it for cheap because of the rate of production of these animals. So the rate of production of the plants. Yeah. Okay. So that is a very brief of how macam it matters your food choices. Like your decision to increase. We are not talking about elimination entirely, but we are talking about increasing our demand for vegetables and managing our demand for chicken, meat, and seafood. Okay. So it is avoidable. It's it I wouldn't say it's unavoidable entirely, but it can be managed. Okay. Ustaz, do you have anything to add for this?
About going vegan, is it? So
about how depleting the world's resources is unavoidable when it comes to our consumption habit. Like, do we not eat at all? That's what she's saying, lah.
So I think I remember I read somewhere that there's actually enough food for the entire world population. Just like how, for example, the richest man, right, can solve poverty, global poverty, and still be the richest man. You know, so it tells you it tells you something that there is a deeper problem, right, that we are facing. And it's not just a consumption habit, but what are the forces that are shaping our consumption habits? We need to ask this question. I think this is the bigger question that we should be asking ourselves. So this is what I find lacking in the documentary itself. But allow me to just share briefly before we run out of time, because I mentioned that I want to share this Tawhidic paradigm, right? I think, is it okay if I proceed?
Yes.
So I think I mentioned in the previous session about how the Quran has basically outlined the position of man in the universe. But again, when it comes to our relationship with the natural world, I think we need to rethink this relationship through the Tawhidic paradigm. And sorry, hold on now. Okay. Oh my God, I should invest in a phone stand. Okay.
I will show you. I'll share with you some solutions later.
Okay, make sure it's economically viable. Okay.
Yes.
So
these things are pretty cheap, Ustaz. No.
I should. Okay. So going back to my point earlier, right? I think we need to rethink our relationship with the environment through this Tawhidic paradigm. And our relationship with the natural world is not human-centric, right? Where humans, we always have this misperception that humans, we are the apex predator, right? That is what we're being taught. But I think from an Islamic point of view, I'm not saying that I'm challenging science, but we need to rethink this position from a hierarchical perspective that, you know, humans are at the top of the food chain and then everything else is subservient. But the Quranic position tells our position as something that is otherwise, right? In fact, it's not this hierarchical position, but instead the Quranic vision of man positions himself in the natural world as a relationship that is symbiotic, that is in harmony with nature, that is reciprocal with nature. I think I mentioned this, what do you call it? Purpose of creation in the previous session, but it is basically outlined by Ar-Raghib al-Asfahani, where he mentioned that, you know, the Quranic vision basically outlines three main tasks as to how it informs man to live and act in an ethical way. So first is the imaratul ard, right, cultivation of the earth that benefits man and environment. There is this element of reciprocity. And one of the pioneers of environmental ethics, Aldo Lopot, he coined the term land ethic, in which we have to respect the land and protect it from being exploited. And secondly is acting as a vicegerent, as a khalifa. That is something that is not anthropocentric, but is theocentric. So everything revolves around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our relationship with the world, our relationship with humans, our relationship with the animals, right? It should be theocentric, not human-centric. So these creations should not be subservient to us, but instead we should be subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, right? We work together with nature. And finally, this all falls under ibadah. It is a religious obligation. But again, you know, Tawheed is not something that is just an abstract concept, right? But it is also a guide for social action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, you know, where we have to maintain Allah's moral and social order to preserve Tawheed in Surah An-Nisa, verse 135. So therefore, any effort that supports the well-being of His creations is critical for a Tawheedic society. Thus, in the name of Tawheed, we need to ensure that our consumption habits are not causing harm to the environment, and we need to challenge these power structures, or, you know, these forces that are shaping these consumption habits that continue to allow our lands, our seas to be exploited. Yeah. So that is what I very briefly a Tawheedic worldview of the natural world, where it's not just an abstract concept, but it's also a guide for social action. Yeah. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay. I wanted to ask, there are a few questions, okay, because there okay, not just from you, but I hear this repeatedly when it comes to our environment, about how we are like what you say, like sorry, was it land
Ethics.
ethics, yes. So it's like, as Muslims, like, we are supposed to be the Khalifah and protect the environment, right?
Yep.
So one way we can do that is by our food choices, right? But when we are talking about us being Khalifahs on earth, what is the manifestation of that? Like, what does that mean? That is something that I have problems translating that into something that is real world. Yeah. So it's so what is the manifestation of that? So if I'm talking about that, in the first thing that comes to my mind is actually setting up an environmental cause group, and it will be an IPC, and basically we fight the pirates, you know.
Yep.
So that would be like that would be our jihad, I suppose.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that will be entirely a faith-based decision to protect the sea, right?
Yep.
So that is macam one manifestation. Although like I'm not encouraging you guys to do that. What I'm trying to say is that that is one manifestation, but it's kind of overreaching at this point as me, as someone who's just one person eating Manhattan fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So other ways of manifestation. We've covered some manifestation of that. One is responsible food choices, eating in moderation.
Yeah.
Would plastics be one of it?
For sure.
Or effectively, okay, I would say something that is within reach for me is to macam include a campaign to lessen the effects of hyper consumerism. You get what I mean? That would be something that is a responsible campaign to run, and is within reach, and is entirely sensible, and it's not life threatening. Kan?
Yeah.
So I'm getting it right. I'm getting it right.
Yep. Absolutely right. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I think also we mentioned this in the earlier session that, of course, whatever that we discuss, these are the ideals, right? But there's always a gap between the ideal and the reality. But again, as Muslims, we are also driven by the concept of ihsan, right? Ihsan is the strive for perfection. So, as best as possible, we try to strive for these ideals. We have to actualize these ideals as best as possible in our own ways. So, of course, not everyone has the means to, come up with a campaign. But again, as simple as starting from our homes, starting with the self. Then from the self, it translates into the home. From the home, it translates, inshallah, into society. And society slowly can translate into the better world. But again, these are all ideals, right? And we always strive for these ideas, and we have to remain hopeful. As Muslims, Islam is a religion of hope. It always gives us hope, and I think that is what faith gives us, right? So we should not be disheartened, but we should also not allow this hope to blind us from the actual realities on the ground. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Ustaz. I'm gonna run through a bit more. Seems like more comments have come in. Ustaz Shazwan El-Rani seems to be a fan of this session, so perhaps I'll invite him.
You should.
Okay. Although, Asatiza, they don't really put Ustaz in their handle, so I'm not too sure some of Asatiza. I'm pretty sure some of them still are Asatiza.
I can help you with that.
Okay, yeah, which one?
We'll take it offline.
Okay, we'll take it offline. Okay, so yes, Kitty Musa is saying that I feel that it's as long as we are not wasting our food and not polluting the seas. Yeah, that is something that we can immediately see the effects of our actions.
Yep.
That's a good one. Yes, I really love the idea of you mentioned about how the symbiotic relationship with the natural world. Yeah, that is something that we tend to forget, especially when we are living in a highly urbanized Singapore. We don't really see nature. But I will share a bit about when I was living in Europe, where there was definitely less tall buildings. The highest we go is level 4. That's about it. And I spend a lot of my time in the parks, actually. And if I were to go to the zoo, I will not leave the zoo for the entire day because there's just simply too many animals to see. And that actually, and when I do all of that and spend a lot of time in nature, I actually spend less time eating. And it became more natural to be vegan. Like Meatless Mondays was effortless when I was living in Europe. So it's really easy to go without meat, and it's really easy to go without fish because the vegan options or the basically non-meat options, there were a lot more, and I didn't feel like eating animals. So I find that we become more, we consume more the more we are living in an urban society. So we need to reconnect with nature. spend more
Yep.
time there, I feel. Right.
Absolutely.
Did
I
you
agree
did
with
you
you. We need,
experience the same thing
yeah,
when
yeah,
you were
of
living
course.
overseas?
Yeah, of course. Uh, and this is what I try to also bring in my family. Like on every Sundays, we try as best as possible to go for hiking trips, right? Of course, you know, macam pergi Clementi Park. At least it's something. You know, we want to. I want to educate my child or my son from a very young age that you know having this relationship with nature is very important because without nature, we'll not be here, right? It's a reciprocal relationship, and we have to respect nature. So you know, we have to again start from home. I'm not asking for huge campaigns, but it starts from home. But I absolutely agree with you, Jum, on this. That you know, when you are in the desert, for example, right? I was away and you know I was living basically in the desert. So the vastness of the desert allowed me to reflect something that I couldn't when I'm living in this urbanized lifestyle where everything is fast paced. And we need these moments of reflection as a human being, not just as a Muslim, but as a human being. We need moments of reflection. We need this time and space to stop, to think of the implications of our actions. But we are living not just in everything is so hyper. We are hyper consumerist. We are hyper connected, right? We are always connected. Up to a point where we don't have this time to just pause and reflect. So that is why probably when we are away from this hyper connectivity, we have this space to connect or reconnect with the land that has given us so much. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this session, right? So we right, and then after that, I hope that okay, I'll say something first. But of
Okay.
course, whatever I say is never better than Asatiza's sharing. So I'll
Yeah.
just say that I hope this session has allowed you guys to have some balance and apa and allow you guys to macam not feel so guilty whenever you see such documentaries like Seaspiracy on Netflix. And I just want to highlight that Seaspiracy is not the only of such documentaries. There are documentaries attacking the meat industry,
Yep.
documentaries that attack all the different types of industries lah, basically when it comes to food. And there are some outrightly promoting veganism. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. What I'm saying is that there's some balance to all of them. Yeah.
Yep.
So and what gives me hope is actually I really do believe that if everyone do their little bits and parts,
Yep.
and overall we somehow manage to reduce our demand for consumables, for food especially. Actually, a lot of us are overeating. I just want to share that if you guys are following me closely on Instagram, you guys would know that I am actually working with Akila from One Habit with regards to my eating and my weight loss journey. And
Yep.
she actually said that the wider population, 95% of our community, like really like the white population in general, everyone, we are all actually overeating. To be honest, we
Yep.
don't need that much food. Yeah.
Yep.
So if we can
True.
somehow eat less, kan, I think that we can somehow eat less or moderate what we are eating. And most of the time, as someone who is macam very in touch with the food industry, a lot of I noticed that a lot of the portions are actually bigger than what one person can handle. So
Mm-hmm.
me and my husband usually we share one food. So when we order food, when we order like one dish in a restaurant to share, me and my husband, we get looks lah. They would think we singkit or what, you know. But actually, to be honest, we're not big eaters at all. Me and my husband, we
Yeah.
do not go to buffets. We don't. I
Yeah.
love the food at buffets. It's always very nice. My favorite is carousel. Tapi we just don't go there because we just don't go there on our own unless it's part of a big party, like you know people want
Yeah.
unless it's a social decision to go there for family kan. But on our own, we actually do not go there. We actually enjoy going to smaller, quieter places that we can share food and won't give us the looks for, you know, for ordering singkit, but really just because we like to eat variety and we don't eat a lot. So that is those are the actionable steps that we share, and perhaps it will help you guys macam manage all these feelings that you feel, because us as Gen Z, okay, I'm not Gen Z lah, I'm not that young, but yeah, so we feel a lot of things when we see things on social media, and this kind of knowledge and sharing does help managing just help. I hope it helps you manage all the feelings that you see, okay, because I think Seaspiracy is just one of the starts. There will be many documentaries that will unfold and will release information on these kind of things lah. Okay, Ken? Yes, people are talking about how overeating and they're agreeing with me. Ha ha ha. Yes. Everyone is overeating. You're not the only one. I'm the only one. Okay, so let us have the closing statements, and then we'll close the session.
Okay. So let me just summarize whatever that we have discussed to basically 2 points lah. Okay, first is, I think in this session we emphasize the need to stress on food that is good, wholesome and pure, that aims to promote and protect the common good and interests of humankind. And not just humankind, but other living beings, and that includes the environment. And this means that we need to rethink our relationship with the natural world. That is not something that is hierarchical and exploitative, but it is a relationship that is in harmony and reciprocal. That means we benefit from nature and nature benefits from us. And that, for me, in my opinion, makes us the best of creation. And secondly, I think we also need to bring together, like what you are trying to do, Jum, like we need to bring together Muslim who are, informed about the religious sciences, or Muslim scholars, food scientists and experts working on this theoretical and practical frameworks to solve contemporary food issues, such as maybe food safety, sustainability, fair trade, alternative farming, and modern technologies that can help to build a better future for everyone. Again, not just the rich, right, but for everyone, right, which includes the marginalized in the community. And these alternative, ecologically minded solutions, again, I reiterate the point, must allow the idea of tayyib to be a reality for all, not just for those who are privileged. And when tayyib is a reality for everyone, I think that, in my opinion, is the culmination of human dignity and flourishing. And allow me to end with this beautiful hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, he once came upon some people who were sitting on their mounts and talking to one another. And he said to them, "Ride them safely, then leave them safely, and do not use them as chairs for you to have conversations in the streets and marketplaces, because the one that is ridden may be better than the one who rides it, and may remember God more than he does." So from this hadith, it simply says that we need to reclaim our ethics, our faith that is connected to the earth, to the environment that has given us so much, that has nourished us. And our understanding of Islam, being a Muslim, means that you should not be selfish, but you should be selfless. And I think Ramadan, it is a good month for us to start and change our consumption habits so that we can be we are allowed to live a mindful life, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam.
Oh my God, that is such a beautiful hadith. I will reflect on it. I'm gonna do some more research on that. I always love all the research I do after our sessions. And
Awesome.
I mean, it helps me go deeper into it, especially. Thank you so much, Ustaz Farouq, and selamat berbuka to you and to your
Likewise
family, and
to
to everyone who is and thank you to everyone who wish us selamat berbuka, except for Chub Ashraf. You only wish Ustaz Farouq, never wish me. So
you can call him out
okay,
also.
I'll see you.
Yeah. So anyway, I was informed that today is your birthday, Jumaat. right?
Today? No, it's tomorrow. Yesterday. It was yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Oh, okay, okay. So I must have. Okay, so a belated birthday to you, and
Thank
selamat
you.
berbuka to everyone. And since I'm live here, and next week is already Raya kan. Kalau salah silap maafkan, terkasar bahasa ke apa. Nak visit tapi tak boleh kan. Tapi insyaAllah we hope that we can have more opportunities to meet each other again soon. InsyaAllah.
Yes, inshallah. And thank you. And yes, I want to say the same. Minta maaf to everyone kalau terkasar bahasa, because it is my first time running IG live series which with an Islamic, I would say Islamic perspective, and I was actually very nervous throughout this whole session, all 4 sessions in fact. And I'm always nervous to be addressing Asatiza in public because I don't know what's the decorum, but I decided to just go ahead anyway, and I hope I did okay. And Ustaz Farouq, if I say anything atau kasar bahasa,
Oh
minta
no.
maaf banyak.
Yeah. No,
And
no,
to
no. You did
everyone as
good.
well,
You did good.
Alhamdulillah, yay.
Yeah.
And to everyone as well who's watching, and sorry if I call you out, it was just bergurau saja, okay? Okay, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so
Selamat
much
berbuka.
for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank
And
you so
take care.
much, guys.
Assalamualaikum.
Take care. Waalaikumsalam.